Ms. Albrecht.
Here.
Mr. Wallace.
Here.
Mr. Putnam.
Here.
Mayor Catt.
Here, thank you. All right, we'll move right to our agenda, and that, the first item is the recovery update. Is that gonna do that all the time?
Every time somebody dials into the call and connects, it's.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, city staff, recovery update.
Philip and Adrian. Philip.
I'll go first. On the water side, all the samples on the east side, which is 22nd Street to 386, have passed. Which means we could lift the boil water notice for that side, but it's a staff's recommendation that we do not do that. We keep it citywide until we get both sides of the city to pass. The reason being was just this morning, we had a pressure drop in our system below 20 PSI. Had we rescinded that boil water notice, we would have had to reissue that boil water notice today. So we think our recommendation is continue the boil water notice for the whole city. But we do have water from 22nd Street to 386, and we currently have water from 22nd Street to 30th Street going west. We've got a couple issues with some fire hydrants and stuff that we gotta get fixed before we continue charging that line, but we are working that way. Sewer, we have 21 lift stations that are currently on line power. Some still need to have some work done to it, but we do have 21 stations on line power. We have, the master lift station is on bypass power with generator backup. And we do have 12 panels that we gotta replace currently. All right, what that means is that some of them we have patched together to get to work. They are working, and others are just simply gone, that we gotta replace. Sanitation, we've been working on picking up garbage every day, everywhere where we can find it. What we'd like to do is cut that back to 2 days a week. We're thinking Mondays and Thursdays for 2 reasons. One, it'll free up those guys on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday to help out with water breaks and things like that. And also, hopefully, by cutting it back to 2 days a week, hopefully we'll start seeing people stop putting bags of garbage outside the road and hopefully cut back on the bear issues. Because unfortunately, they are back in town, hard and heavy. But that's all I've got so far. If anybody's got any questions.
When will that schedule start?
Haven't decided. I'd like to give it, at least a good week to get notice out to everybody and not just spring it on. But try to get the word out to everybody before we do it. So I would say a week is a good time.
Any questions?
What days would those be? Tuesday and
Monday and Thursday,
Monday and Thursday, thank you.
unless somebody else, that's just my recommendation.
Sounds like a good one. All right, moving on, you said Adrian?
Adrian.
Yesterday, we met with Michael McKenzie and Ralph Robertson of Robertson Associates, our city accounting consultants, and started discussing budget revisions and got into a little bit of funding sources. I've also reached out to SRF and formally requested a 2-year deferment on our loans. I'm working with USDA discussing our options for our loan repayment there for the next 2 years. They don't have a plan yet, but that is in process. And we'll have a budget revised to you soon. And that's all I have.
Okay. Any questions? As we move along, as we hit a topic, if you have a question. Okay. Anything else on number 1? Is that the extent of that one? Okay. Number 2?
Number 2 and number 3 are kind of together. We thought there for a minute we were gonna have Bay County take over monitoring, but it looks like we've been going back and forth with the state, with the debris hauling. Where we stand now is we are considering an option, that includes the right of entry waivers for properties with substantial debris. The issue right now is the state contract that our hauler would be working under is mostly vegetation. Very different than what we have here. It's mostly vegetation in other areas. We have more debris, asbestos, white goods that have to be decommissioned. So we're talking to them about rates and seeing if we can work out the rates so that we can then hand that off. So I know, Nick, you responded, sent them a letter just earlier today to the state outlining our concerns. You might want to
Yeah, it's not sent yet, it's what I was working on right before the meeting. From conversations I've had with the state, which they did eventually confirm today in writing, they're going to handle, we're working through the logistics of which contractor and the details of when it would start. But they're going to handle debris removals inside any right-of-ways. That doesn't just mean clear the asphalt. Your right-of-ways usually extend probably 10 feet beyond the asphalt. So if you push your debris up to the right-of-way, they'll get removed. And then the way they framed it, they didn't say they're gonna just come take every single private parcel's debris throughout the city, but they're referring to it as essential debris removals for private parcels. I think it'll be a workable system. And that'll involve getting forms and paperwork signed to get the DOT contractor's permission to come and clear the debris. So that's a great step forward, because just a few days ago, that was all very shaky and uncertain. We're working on that, as Ms. Castro said. We're trying to keep the same contractor that we have now, because it's working well, it's been efficient. What that comes down to is whether DOT is comfortable enough to hire that contractor. And if they come back and say, we can't do it, we have to use the pricing that we have on our current contractor, my recommendation is we would just move to DOT's contractor, move on, and stop ringing the cash register. But that's something that's in the works now.
A couple more things, unless anyone has any questions
Yeah,
about the DOT.
I do. Now, that's a change from the letter that we got, correct?
Not really a change, it's just a clarification. The letter wasn't as clear.
Yeah, their fourth option in the letter involved DOT hiring our contractor, an emergency contract. And the reason why that hasn't just gone through smoothly is there's some conversations about pricing.
Well, I thought our current contractor adjusted that.
Not yet, the state hasn't agreed to that. That, you talked about the meeting yesterday?
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, they
okay,
haven't
that didn't
even,
happen.
they have not agreed to that.
Okay.
We've made the argument why the rate should change,
Yeah.
vegetation versus actual debris, but they have not
So,
agreed to
for
that.
clarification, at this point, we have no documents ready for the right-of-way
Entry.
entry, thank you.
Not this-
Correct. DOT wants to provide forms that they're comfortable with, since it's very likely going to be them and their contractors, and they have to.
So
provide-
as of today, citizens, property owners, if they can get Joe Smith to push to the right-of-way,
That will help.
that's all they have to do.
That will help.
That's correct.
Okay, and the right-of-way entry may or may not come?
Well, the entry onto the private property, we anticipate that will occur for many parcels, maybe not every parcel, but it doesn't need to happen on every parcel. And if your home is in fairly good order, you probably prefer to put your stuff out to the right away, keep people away from your home.
And we have Team Rubicon, I was looking for Kathy Crum, a group of volunteers, and they can do debris moving, so there's still options for volunteers to get it to the right of way to allow the city to pick it up now. And even when we do hand that off to DOT, we'll maintain and manage the right-of-way entry waivers, Philip will, to make sure that those get acted upon quickly. We don't want someone having to wait to send it to the DOT and the DOT doing it. We're gonna try to keep some control of that to make sure it happens.
Would there be any difference in, like, where I live, a lot of concrete blocks? Is that different than, I'm tired of moving
Yeah,
concrete blocks.
I think debris is debris. I
Okay.
don't know.
That's
any-
considered sandy.
Yeah, we anticipate all the debris will be covered. I'm sure there'll be some directions about trying to sort it or something, but it's all included.
Okay.
I just had a couple more things just to let the council know.
Just for clarification's sake, if Joe Smith does want to push his stuff out to the right of way, be very wary of where meters and stuff are located. We had 4 ripped out yesterday because of that very thing, people pushing stuff out to the right of way with a tractor.
Good.
We had 4 meters ripped out.
White goods, those are all the appliances, air conditioners. We're staging those. We have DEP approval to stage those at Pure Road right now, so you'll see those collecting there. As soon as they're decommissioned, the Freon is decommissioned in those, they'll be moved out. The metal is being recycled and that revenue will come back to the city, but you'll see that stuff being staged there for a little while. And then vessels, boats, and automobiles, we're waiting on a license agreement back from St. Joe Company. Nick has that for approval right now. We got that last night. And that will give us the authority to stage vessels and boats on the St. Joe boat ramp property temporarily. We're hoping no more than 60 days so that people can come claim those. The insurance company can pick them up, people can claim the boats and the automobiles, and then we'll be moving those out quickly.
Who do you call about boat recovery? Somebody wants to know where do they go and who do they
The
call?
police department, we'll be logging those and
What's that phone number?
865,
865.
I'm sorry, 850-370-0567.
Okay. Is that a working number?
Yes, sir, they go straight to me.
Straight to where?
To me.
Can you say that again?
0567?
Yes, sir. 850-370-0567.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do
And
you
we keep
call
a
that
log.
number if you have an unknown boat in your yard with nobody claiming it?
how do you want to handle those, Philip? We're gonna be
Yes.
collecting those.
Yes, call that number.
Okay.
Call that number and they'll head you in the right direction.
So you'll see those there again. We're hoping 60 days max. And we're not, if your insurance company tells you you need a stolen or a police report for your missing vehicle, we're not issuing
Right.
police reports.
They're not
for-
stolen, they're just
They-
removed
yeah,
for
They were just
relocating.
moved by Michael, they're not stolen. So. Okay, that's it.
Okay? Anything else on that?
Should we maybe get the council to approve that park location for the license? It's of no cost. St. Joe's not charging anything. The form is standard. I think it has indemnification language if we hurt them or damage their property.
Where is this, at the boat ramp?
Yes, it's just an addendum to our lease that
Lease.
allows us to put it there. So if you guys don't have any issues with that, then we'll sign it and move it on out as soon as.
Does that need a formal approval, or you just saying we can add it as an addendum?
I would go ahead and vote on it since technically it could be considered a lease amendment even though it's temporary.
Motion?
We have a motion to amend the current lease agreement with St. Joe to stage,
Have a
am I
motion.
saying that right, boats and vessels?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any discussion? Any opposition? Okay? Moving on.
The Dewberry task order, I think Dina, let's speak to that.
Yes, so we had brought this up last meeting. This is a task order for general engineering services as kind of an emergency interim task order to cover us for the work we've done up to date, and then also over the next few weeks until we're able to put out, I guess, an RQ, and then you'll move into more specific task orders after that. So this is just an hourly rate contract, which is not typically what we do, but that is what we've been told by Atkins FEMA's gonna want to see. There's some additional pages to this that Nick sent. We didn't have time to put that into one document, but that will be put into this task order so that it meets what he's recommending. And then we also need to add a not to exceed value to it. And I think we would put that at 50,000. So you would only be giving us the hourly rates that you see there. This is based on our original 2003 contract, same rates. And then the not to exceed the 50,000, I'm not saying we would get to that, but that would be the cap. At that point, we would have to come back in front of you and get another task order.
And those extra pages you have, the first page is probably where you want to focus your attention. All the other pages are just standard required contracts by the required contract clauses by the federal government. The purpose of that first page is to lay out most of the tasks that Dewberry will be working on, so it's not entirely open-ended.
So what is temporary? What is emergency engineering services for how long? It's just open, is it?
Well, I think, so to cover what we've done so far, and that was right at like, I think day 3 after the storm, up to now, and then until you're able to, I think you're putting out, or you're gonna discuss putting out for RFQ based on a recommendation from Atkins for engineering services. So this would allow us to continue to work with you until that RFQ is put out and you selected an engineer moving into the next phase of Hurricane Michael services.
And it's not a bad suggestion to add a time period. The dollar figure on it and the likelihood that we'll be doing that RFQ will limit it, but if you wanted to say 60 days or 90 days, that certainly wouldn't hurt.
I think that's what we did on the Atkins, was 60 days,
And I think that's what
45 to 60.
I think that's what Atkins says is the allowable period for emergency is 60, so I wouldn't go beyond that.
We'll add that to the documents when we have the complete copy.
60 days, I think a time is appropriate. And just, so this hourly rate goes back to the time 3 days after start,
Yes.
correct? And we're doing that because, at whose recommendation?
To do the task order, or?
Yeah.
Atkins recommended that we do a task order to describe the work that we've been working on post-storm up for that first 60 days.
And the fact that we don't have an agreement with you that outlines a dollar amount, and that
So-
we don't have anything with you that puts a hourly rate.
We do. Our 2003 continuing services contract, that's where these hourly rates are coming
From the
from.
from the 03 contract.
And that's a current contract, continuing services contract with the city. So that's where those rates that were approved back then.
And if it's helpful, Mayor, if you remember, we did the same thing for Bo. Like when
We did.
Yeah,
We
we
did.
had to, for emergency services. So this is standard FEMA. If you want to get reimbursed, you know, do all of these things to improve your chances and lower your risk on reimbursement, not getting reimbursed. Then the next thing you'll see is the RFQ
Okay.
for engineering services, which we've got to do as well.
So does this require, this is an action item?
The task order is, yes.
The task order is an action item?
And what we'll do is Dean and I will put it together, everything you have in front of you into a single unified document and bring it to the mayor for signature.
Did you want to vote on that?
Yeah, I think let's check them off as we go. So, any other questions on the task order?
I think it's good we're still on the 303 salary schedule.
All right, Chair will entertain a motion for approval of the task order.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, discussion? Anyone? Any opposition to the task order? Okay. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on.
The RFQ, similar process, we're probably going to want to do an RFP for building services as well. FEMA expects to see a procurement for 3 to 5 years for professional services. Any longer than that, you get into some risk with reimbursement because they want to see that something has been competitively awarded and review that. So we need to put out an RFQ for engineering services. We also need to do the same thing for building services.
Okay, now building services we did, didn't we?
We just did the emergency
Emergency, that's
task order.
All right, what about legal services? What about accounting services? What about all the other services?
That's a good question. But these are the ones now that we're looking at.
I'm not sure how old the accounting contracts are. Nobody's noted it on legal. I've only been here about 3 years, that's probably why.
It's 3 to 5 years is the standard for FEMA. Yours is probably not older than 5. The accounting is probably not older, that's 4 years. So they're 3 to 4, so we're okay
So
on
it's the
those.
time frame.
Yes.
It's the age of the
age,
contract.
Exactly.
With some of our contracts are over 10 years old. Those jump out as problematic
Right.
on this reimbursement process.
Well, council's decision, I mean,
I think we have to do everything we can to ensure that we get maximum amount of money, you know, for the services back from FEMA. And if that's what we've got to do, that's what we've got to do.
And we've talked about the building services prior too, so if FEMA's saying you need to do this, well then, I think we need to
and
do
that
it.
is the driving force here, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we have, is that an action item?
We'll
The
proceed with it unless there's an objection and the council doesn't want us to. It'll be
Yeah,
a
I mean, there's
standard
really,
RFP.
I mean, Is there any reason we would not submit, we're gonna do it on building services and,
Correct.
engineering? Okay, moving forward. And how long do we advertise for that?
2 weeks is what we've been doing
2 weeks?
typically.
Good, everybody good? Moving on. Questions?
I have one question on bill, well, maybe just a comment.
It's coming up.
On building service?
Yeah, 709, that
No,
order?
no, the building service you're talking about.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You were talking about doing that before FEMA reimbursement, is that correct, primarily?
It's to help, I mean.
The reason I bring this up is, on the normal building service contract, the city pays nothing. So there's no reimbursement involved, once we get past the emergency part.
Yeah, we do, they make a percentage of our
Right.
permitting process.
All I'm saying is be careful what you ask for.
I understand.
Everybody understand that? Meaning on the RFQ, I don't know, you say that, and I gotta ask some questions. I'm not sure I understood what you said.
Well, what I'm saying is if you put it out at RFQ and you find another firm that you feel would handle it better, they may charge you money.
Oh, that doesn't mean we'll accept it.
I don't understand that.
Okay,
All I'm saying is be careful what you ask for.
I'm now got you. Okay. I'm with you, I'm with you. All right, so the go-ahead is for the RFQ.
RFQ on engineering, RFP on building
Yeah, RFP,
services.
you're right,
So
two different
it
ones.
partially covers that concern. So the building services will have the pricing
Pricing.
structure proposed in the, we may end up with exactly what we have right now.
Okay? Moving on. 6.
Substantial damage assessment, we started that yesterday. They're trying to get through about 150 a day. Yesterday was their first day, they got through about 50. We didn't really have all the pieces from the county on valuation. So as we begin that process, if you, for example, need to come to City Hall and get a permit for a new roof, if we haven't completed the substantial damage estimate, then Royce will pick up the phone, call the team. They'll get that done within 24 hours. You can come right back the next day and get your permit. We're not gonna hold you up. So they've agreed to react to people here who are ready to get their permit. And what I wanna say about the substantial damage estimate, we're not coming in your home. So it's just an observation from the outside. We're gonna work with you, we're gonna be flexible about it. Don't get alarmed when you come up and Royce says, well, your substantial damage estimate came back as over 50% of the structure. We'll be working with homeowners, so we're gonna be pretty flexible and lenient on that. We want you to rebuild, we want you to rebuild quickly. We wanna make it easy, as easy for you as we can.
Let me ask a question, honey. Maybe I misunderstood something on the substan. You're saying that y'all, we have to send a team out, the city does, to assess our homes, even though they've already been assessed by our insurance companies. And if I've got a contractor who can come out and put a roof on, then he's got to come down and get a permit, and then it's being assessed by someone in the city?
We have to assess for FEMA all structures that were damaged. And it's just it's looking forward for, it's the National Flood Insurance Program, and it just looks forward to what kind of damage you sustain. If there's repeat damage, maybe you flooded 3 years ago, they're taking all of that and looking at it. So it's not, we're not assessing, as I said before, we're not even coming inside. We're just looking at the outside to see if it looks like it's significantly damaged. Yesterday, the results of yesterday, just about all the homes on Highway 98 were substantially damaged. And they just log that for National Flood Insurance Program requirements. It's not your appraisal, it's not your assessment by your insurance company. It's just something that we do for FEMA. it's, the 50% rule is statutory, meaning, you know, if your home is over 50% damaged, in theory, you're supposed to bring it up to code, but that's not really what we're looking at. We're gonna look at what it's gonna actually cost you when you come in and meet with Royce, your actual cost for reconstruction is really
Of
what.
the
we look
entire
at.
house?
Yes, yes.
Who's providing the service? Who's doing the evaluating?
Atkins is doing that.
And they can do that in one day. In other words, if my builder says he can build next Wednesday, the roof, then he has to come in on Tuesday, they will go out, assess it, and he can begin construction on
Right,
it.
we're gonna react to those. If you come in and we haven't done the SDE yet, we'll go out, Royce will make a phone call, we'll get that done for you.
Would it be in the owner's best interest to come in here and talk to the city and tell them, hey, I want to permit this roof, can y'all go out and assess it now, and so the builder can go ahead and move forward?
Absolutely. If you know you've got a contractor coming to get a permit, by all means, come up and just let Royce know, and she can give them a heads up on that.
Okay.
Okay? Is that a hand or a? No, that's a, okay. That's a hand. Go
I've got a
ahead.
house that's probably gonna be involved, there's concrete block, 4 walls, roof still on it and everything. And it's hard to figure out, you know, whose appraisal of what this house, the value of it, and what's 50% of that gonna be? Is it the tax assessor in the county, which said my house is worth $53,000 and my lot's worth $160,000? You know, 25,000, and we'll redo it. What, I need something to hang my hat on, because I wanna rebuild my house, and I want Mexico Beach to be what it's supposed to be, just like it was. But if things are gonna start changing, and mine in the X zone, all of a sudden, and mine's on a concrete slab, if it's gotta be 12 feet high on pilings, which didn't seem to work too well this time around anyway, I can't afford to build it.
Great.
So that's my concern now, and I know a lot of people that are concerned with the same thing I am. Where do the numbers come from?
The valuation is based on the property appraiser's value of your home less the land effective January 1 of this past year.
Mine's below water. The house was 53 and the property's 163. You subtract 163 from 53 and I'm down owe money for having my house there. I mean, you know, how do you calculate that? I mean, I'm not a math expert, but I'm college educated. The numbers don't.
That's why.
My house
we
was
know-
appraised for $400,000.
Exactly, and that's why you need to come talk to us, and we're gonna look at all of those on a case-by-case basis.
Who's gonna be the
fair market value?
before the storm?
That's what's on your property appraiser's website as of January 1 of this past year, less the land value.
They show a building value, you don't even need to do
The
that.
property appraiser's value is not the same as the fair market value. So which one you go?
Well, for the SDE process, we're going by the fair market value that's on the property appraiser's website. But when you come up and you meet with Royce to rebuild, she's gonna look at the cost of your, you give an amount on what it's gonna cost for your repairs, and then we'll make a decision at that time.
Is it going to be a fair,
It's
liberal
gonna be,
deal?
it's going to be a fair process, that's what I'll tell you, it's gonna be fair. We're gonna be fair with the numbers.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I know you're about rebuild, I'm trying to listen on to everything you're all saying. What about those of us who want to rebuild on 37th Street? Our lots were told that the city ordinance, the lots are too small to build on. What about us?
We're gonna be talking about.
Yeah,
ordinance.
we're not there yet.
Okay.
We haven't, I think that's coming up. Bear with us.
I'll be here.
Okay, good. Yes, ma'am.
Are you guys gonna put something out in writing on the 50/50 for us to either on Facebook first where we can print it out, because we're all asking about that right now.
I think we did, and it should be on Facebook and the city's website and out on the, we passed that out at the town hall meeting.
Yes,
Check
it
on
is.
that.
It is on there.
I think it's on Facebook
It
and
wasn't
the
very
city.
descriptive though, on where we're on there.
If you need more information, I'll be happy to talk with you after. Okay.
All right,
Speaking of what his question was, so would you recommend that people wait till they see what these new codes are before they start the rebuild? Or
Yeah,
and
we
how
have-
long will that be before we hear new codes?
that's coming up too.
Gotcha.
Okay, everybody good? Moving on.
The Atkins contract, we think we've ironed all that out. We're waiting, Nick, you might want to speak to, I think we're waiting on something back from Atkins.
I think it's all set. There was one certification, it was a standard federal certification we missed the first time that they were filling out, but otherwise, it's, I believe, ready for signatures. We haven't had much luck with FEMA giving us clear answers on reimbursability of various items. So on this contract, their answer was kind of a non-answer, but I understand that we probably want to proceed anyways.
This is the emergency, the 60-day contract. So we would like to go ahead and sign that, and
Is everyone, and I use that term, let me identify, I'm talking about Callaway, Springfield, Land Haven, Gulf County, Fort St. Joe, are they all in emergency? Do you know, have information on?
They're not all the same. I know that Bay County hired an emergency consultant. I don't believe that Callaway or Springfield did. I'm not sure what Panama City did. So it's a mixture.
Lynn Haven did, I understand Lynn Haven did.
Okay, I just don't know how all that works, I don't see how we could have not hired one personally, but I was just, Atkins hadn't left, have they?
No.
Okay.
Charles.
That's a good sign, that's a
Thank
good sign.
goodness,
yeah.
thank goodness.
Okay.
So if you guys-
So we're gonna do what? That's, we're waiting to get, I mean,
We're ready to sign the
Yeah.
contract. It was more a matter of just tracking down.
Yes.
we need, this is the, is it 60-day contract? 60-day contract that we agreed to earlier, with Atkins. We need the, make a motion to approve that.
I make a motion that we agree on the Atkins 60-day contract that we
Second.
discussed.
Have a second from the table. All right, any discussion from the table, from anyone in the room? Any opposition? Moving on, 5-0.
Number 8, Adrian touched on that, meeting with the accountants yesterday. We've got all kinds of, Dina's working with state revolving fund, looking at all possibilities for short-term funding until we get FEMA reimbursement for some of this, but we'll be talking more about that when we give you the budget. So you want me to go on to the ordinance, the 90-day moratorium?
I think that's next, let's go with
Okay.
it.
The next one, you have an ordinance in your packet, it's an emergency ordinance for 90-day moratorium on new construction, reconstruction, and modulars, manufactured housing. And the 90 days, we hope it won't take us 90 days, but we think, we're asking for 90 days to allow us to look at the new FEMA maps, to see what the new FEMA maps, how they're gonna lay out with the flood, as well as building code. What we're thinking with building code, we've talked with Bo Queer in our building department. At a minimum, he's thinking we wanna go to the 140 to 160 standard, which is the same as Port St. Joe. We're a little bit below that. So we're just trying to navigate through that and finalize what we want to do with building code as well as elevation based on the flood maps. So that's the purpose of needing the 90-day moratorium to hold on that. If you have other minor repairs, you can come in and get your permit for minor repairs, plumbing, electrical, your HVAC, shingles on your roof, changing out your windows, those types of things. You can still do that if you need to repair your home. This is only for new construction, reconstruction, or bringing in a new home.
The details matter. Let me read exactly what's covered. We use a term called substantial construction, and the definition in this ordinance of substantial construction is the construction of any new building or the placement of a mobile home or manufactured home, the repair or reconstruction of any structure determined to be substantially damaged pursuant to the city's applicable substantial damage determination process, generally meaning that repair costs exceed 50% of the value of the building prior to the damage. The repair or reconstruction of any construction declared to be unsafe by any authorized official or any increase in the square footage of a structure. These are big projects or projects on buildings that are heavily damaged.
Well, let me ask this now. I've got a contractor that I'm meeting this afternoon. And I had spoken to several others, but people won't come to Mexico Beach as a general rule to work because it's hard to get in here, it's so far to live, it's hard to get people to work here. Now, if this gentleman says, yes, I can go ahead and reestablish my permanent residence, it's not a second home like a lot of the people here have, this is where I live permanently, then this is going to deter, from what I just gathered, him being able to complete my home where I can live in it. How in the world do y'all expect us to live if you do that?
Yours is totally, I mean, yours
It's not
meets this-
totally, they said my house, they wouldn't total it, I wish they had. Said it's structurally sound. But everything on the outside and inside has to be totally gutted because the roof leaked. I had 9 foot 8 inches of water in the basement, which after paying flood insurance for 20 years, they came out and said, hey, it doesn't even cover it. So now y'all are telling me after we have been displaced, I lost both cars and a boat, we lost, I know that, but I'm telling the people that, you know, there are circumstances where people have to be, each case should be judged on its own merit. If that house is able to be built, and they say it's structurally sound, I ought to be able to start moving up where I can have a place to live.
That would be one of those situations where you would come up and talk with us, we would look at the results of the SDE, you would bring us the cost for reconstruction, and we would look at that with you. But we can't really start issuing permits until we know what we have to do. That's the issue, and we hope it's not gonna take 90 days, we're gonna do this as
Well, I hope
quickly as
it
we
doesn't
can.
too, because it's really handicapping those people who are trying to move ahead with
Well,
their
we're not
homes.
we don't think, hopefully, when you say we're handicapping you, if we don't know what we're doing, then we're gonna have a hodgepodge mess of trying to decide who can do what.
Well, I agree with you.
But we do need some time. I'm like telling you, 90 days, would certainly want to think we could decide what the parameters are for certain situations, Gary. I understand what you're saying, but we do need some time
I'm not
to
saying
figure it out.
90 days seemed excessive.
Well, I know, we're saying that we don't plan to, in your case and the others that may have similar situations, we think we can come up here and work through that.
Okay, thank you, that's all I want to do.
Don't forget the mold.
Sir?
Don't
Oh, yeah,
forget
they've
the
already,
mold.
everything's been torn out.
I see another hand, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to ask, if you lived on the beach, are you going to be able to build back on the beach, or?
But those are some of the questions we need to get answers to in the next 90 days, like where's the CCCL gonna be? We don't control that, DEP does. We're looking at elevations from the FEMA flood maps, you know, we're gonna have to go taller. Those are the decisions that the council's gonna have to make, you know, where your footprint, you may not have met, you know, you may be in an area where you didn't meet setbacks before. If you're going back in your original footprint, will the council be allowing those types of things? And that's what we have to work through over the next 90 days.
That's gonna be very important.
Well, I mean, you can't even get an architect or nothing now until you don't, you know.
Whether you can build back in your footprint or not, but
Yeah.
if you've got to go up, a lot of people ain't gonna be able to afford it, they're not gonna get enough money out of their insurance companies to go up that extra 10, 12.
Let me ask you
And I think that's a concern for all of us.
I think that's a concern for everybody.
Right, right,
absolutely.
you know, but some of that is out of our hands.
Yes.
Well,
You
there is
know, I mean,
something
we
that-
have to follow the guidelines from the federal and state government.
Too much of
You
it's
know.
out of our
A
hands.
lot of this is gonna be not pure decisions locally, it's going to be things we will be required to do in order to continue to qualify for the National Flood Insurance Program, in order to qualify for future reimbursements. So we're gathering information, and we don't wanna move too quickly and disqualify ourselves from important programs.
Well, I know for a fact, and when I sat there where y'all are, at one time it came up that structures, some of them could not be built back because the setbacks were incorrect. The state of Florida was sued, and I went ahead and checked on it when I was sitting there where y'all are. And the law says you can build back in the footprint where that house sits right now. Unless that's changed since I was sitting here. And I don't
Some
remember that.
disaster, there are disaster situations that government can make adjustments to that, but then we have to be, if we make a decision that takes some of your rights away as a property owner, then you're gonna say, well, why'd you told me I could do that. So, you know, we gotta crawl through this. We don't have all those answers to that. We're just not gonna have them. But we're gonna try to figure it out and work at it diligently.
And a concern you hear all the time is, we had a mobile home, it's demolished, can we put a mobile home on, can we put a modular home on? And so, those are all questions that are flying around the city, as you well know.
Okay,
It's a motion to read, motion to.
Okay.
yes, this is an emergency order, so we're gonna read it and adopt it all today.
Right, and the ordinance itself lays out the basis for the emergency. It's in a lot of warehouse clauses, but the summary would be, I'll read that briefly, just to get it on the record. Summary would be the city council finds an emergency exists. It's more fully described by the foregoing recitals due to the ongoing Hurricane Michael response effort, the need to evaluate and potentially amend city standards for construction and development prior to allowing substantial construction in the city that could be inadequate for the health, safety, and welfare of the city and that could jeopardize the city's eligibility for reimbursement of various Hurricane Michael response costs. Due to this emergency, this ordinance shall not follow the normal requirements of 2 readings or advance notice in the newspaper.
All right, do we have a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any opposition to reading? Mr. Clerk?
Ordinance 709, an emergency ordinance of the city of Mexico Beach, Florida, establishing a 90-day temporary moratorium on the issuance of building permits, development orders, and approvals for substantial construction, defining substantial construction, directing staff to evaluate the adequacy of local construction and development standards and the guidance of applicable agencies and propose amendments to the city council in response to damage by Hurricane Michael, and to maximize eligibility for federal and state reimbursements for hurricane response expenses, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
Motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, discussion? You good on the re-roof?
Yeah, if it's.
You got that, you and I, okay.
Substantial construction is building something new or adding on, basically.
You got it.
Well,
Did I see a question?
It's repairing a structure that's failed the substantial damage test, really.
So we just need to do that for you if you want to.
Now, the only other issue that comes up on that is substantial damage on areas that are not within the NFIP. Because those are not covered under 50% rule.
Well, they are under grandfathering clauses of the city codes and the 50%
But the
rule.
Florida Building Code takes precedent over any city codes as far as all existing buildings. And all that changed about 8 years ago. 50% rule does not apply outside the NFIP.
We've been told for FEMA that if it flooded, you're gonna do the SD, and that's what we're doing.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm talking about the 50% rule.
Well, what does the Florida Building Code say instead of?
There's several different categories, depends on the level of alteration. And it's basically the area that's affected. It doesn't have anything to do with cost. There's different levels of alteration that have to be done. If it's strictly repairs, none of that applies. If it's outside the NFIP. If it's in an NFIP, 50% absolutely.
Well, we also placed a moratorium on development orders, so that would capture a lot of those situations. Not all of them.
And I'm not sure that answers the question, but could we, you know how long this substantial damage assessment is going to be?
Couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks.
But if you have one, we'll get out there and do yours if you.
No, I don't have one.
I don't think that there's a legal obstacle to doing a moratorium on building permits despite Florida Building Code standards. I mean, they occur from time to time, different
No, not the
cities.
moratorium, it's applying the 50% to where the law already covers the
We'll have to work through
Right,
those,
right. 'Cause
that pot of those that may fall in there.
substantial damage is a definition in NFIP, so if it's outside, it does not apply.
Right, it's just the definition we're using for the
Right.
moratorium purpose.
And, yeah, I don't have a problem with the moratorium, it's just whether we apply it outside
I
NFIP.
understand. Do we have a motion, sir? We did?
Yes.
All right. Any opposition to passing the ordinance? Okay, that moves on to 5-0. All right, I'm sure there's some miscellaneous.
Yeah,
All right, you just keep going.
Okay, two things. I think we talked about RVs, owners bringing in RVs while they rebuild. We already have an ordinance on the books that allows you to bring in your RV and put it on your lot. You can get a permit for a temporary power pole if you need to live in your RV while you build. That's a current land development regulation. Because we have a moratorium for 90 days, I would like to allow people to come in and bring in their RV who intend to rebuild during that 90-day period, because we don't want to penalize them because we have a moratorium. I just want to make sure that you guys are comfortable with that, and then as soon as the moratorium is lifted, we'll expect those folks to come in and get their development orders to rebuild. So if you guys are okay with that.
Excuse me, can you bring an RV in, can you hook it to the city sewage?
It depends on where
Your
you're
lot.
It depends on where your lot's at. If you're, say you're on the west side of town, on the south side, currently the sewer isn't up and running, so we couldn't allow you to hook into the sewer system there. But if
That's
you,
where I'm at.
if you can contact me, let me know exactly where you are.
Just let Phil know, and if those pump stations
Come up,
are available,
but I can get the power company to come in through.
Temporary pole, yeah.
I've got a question on,
Yeah.
on the RVs. So after the 90-day is lifted, well, then it takes time to meet with an architect, revise your plans to the new changes, all of that, and that doesn't happen quick.
Right.
And then pull permits after you get your stamp plans. And then, what is it, 6 months right now that you can have? So is there gonna be that time frame gap from now until you can get your plans to where you build to stay in the RV?
We're gonna work with that.
Okay.
This is an unusual situation. It's gonna take a long
Okay,
time.
just clearing it up.
Yeah.
we're not gonna come by and snip your wire.
Hey, I'm shutting the kitchen down.
We're not doing that, I tell
We finally got some pool, Debbie.
Kind of on Tuesday, and they did put a drop dead date, that way you got some kind of a date to negotiate with after. You got the power to extend them later, but at least everybody's now already thinking about 2 years down the road. and we got
you. Oh,
problems
no,
later.
I thought we said 6 months. Did I
Six,
misunderstand?
6 months is the current.
Yeah, we got that in there, so then we can
Already have it.
revisit
Yeah, but he's
that.
also already talking about, you got 90 days to figure out what you're doing. Then you got your architect, you sign your builder, that's another 90 days.
At least.
So your 6 months is nearby done.
Well, but
It
keep
can be
in
renewed.
mind, we've got that.
Yeah.
We can go back, we can do that.
All I'm saying, it'd be nice to have a drop dead date.
He's first 90, I'm counting it for
Right,
6 months.
right. You've got 90 days now to start bringing in your architect and doing some of that discussion.
Not that we know what we need to design.
You gotta know what you're doing.
But if you know.
I don't like using the word drop dead dates. I'd rather use some other kind of name.
We can revisit.
Firm date,
later.
how's that?
I'm just making sure people are working towards it.
We're all
All right.
happy.
And so the next one is modulars for businesses. City staff, we've been talking about being able to get our businesses back in and start stimulating the economy. And so we'd like to ask you guys to consider allowing the businesses, the business owners prior to the storm, coming in and putting a modular on their lot where their building was destroyed, or a food truck, or some temporary building for some of the.
Sure. Gotta do
I
it.
think it's
Gotta do
We
it.
have to. We'll set some
Does that include
guidelines.
CDC?
Yeah, of course, yeah. And we'll set some guidelines around that, but we want to get our business owners back in. We'd like to see Lance bring in a mobile liquor truck. That's the one we
Stop by
really
my
need.
home first.
You know, very good definition of temporary,
Bringing an
because
ordinance
there are
next
not
meeting. Is
any
that the
Florida
plan?
approved modulars available out there. So anything comes in temporary was probably one that's not gonna be approved by Florida. I'm dealing with that, I got 150 school modulars coming in right now, they had to come from Connecticut. because Florida don't have enough to
So we
service.
may just have to
But that's what most of them do.
massage that and make
Exactly.
it work, that's what you have to
Under
do.
the, under the
Right.
definition of temporary, make it available for a certain period of time.
Right, right, and we'll be setting some clear guidelines, we just wanna make sure you guys are comfortable with that
Yes,
approach.
let's
And
do it,
we'll
by all
work with
means.
Nick and make sure that we're.
Absolutely.
So that's not effective immediately, it's something we'll look at next week.
Right,
What about fuel?
I'm sorry?
Fuel, gas?
St. Joe's got gas trucks in there. We need a gas truck out here, so we ain't gotta run to St. Joe's.
You wanna answer that?
We did look at bringing in a retail truck, here in Mexico Beach, and it was gonna, for a retail vendor to come in and put a fuel truck on our right of way and sell you gas, it was about $13,000 a day for the city. We did get a company who came in yesterday and met with us. The guy had been working with the Orlando, state EOC in Orlando. So I gave that information to our logistics guy. He's looking at it again to see if we can go back and revisit that with a different vendor, because we know there's a need there.
Well, there is a need, 'cause
There is a need, but it's also, it's beyond anything that we felt reasonable
Are
about
the
doing.
marina fuel tanks gone? The bulk tanks?
I doubt it.
Oh,
They-
I don't know.
If they were still there,
Yeah,
we
they,
could
Make that work.
we could make that
They
work
could make
if
that
they were
work.
okay with that.
if the tanks are still there, I think they are.
They need to get it.
That would be the,
Check with Nate, because that's on his property, on his, I mean, that's his liability, that's everything. That's not what we were talking, we were looking at a self-contained,
All right,
portable
right,
gas
but
station.
Similar to what St. Joe's got, what you're looking
Yeah,
at.
yeah, we just couldn't believe the cost of it. I saw a hand in the back, yes.
Have you guys looked into those Katrina houses they came up with, after Katrina, and they're like small cottages you can have bought and put on your property while you're rebuilding, and they're actually hurricane, like up to zone 5s, and they're pretty reasonable. I think I may have tagged you guys in them.
Yeah, we actually talked to FEMA about that, and those are cottages that anybody can buy. And as long as they meet the local building code, they're cute. They look just like the ones in Lime Paradise Shores.
Right, so that might be something people are interested in too, that maybe there's some information, is FEMA gonna allow those, or?
Well.
For a temporary basis.
No, we're not talking about the temp trailers, we're talking about actual homes to
Yeah.
be rebuilt afterwards, and they were like $30,000 to $40,000, basic, but they look very much like the cottages behind Paradise Shores, but FEMA has that information. We're trying to stay out of their, shop, but they can give you information if you're interested in those, as long as they meet our local building code.
I'm not, but I know a lot of people that would, so it'd be like something that, the communication factor is not really good. So if that's something that you guys can get out to the people, because you guys would like the cottages, anybody that hasn't seen them, you've seen them.
Yeah, they're really cute.
They're adorable. And they're hurricane made up of,
Yeah,
I think, Cat 5s.
They're well built. We'll try to get something from FEMA and get it out on our.
And they,
Facebook.
you talked about businesses, and they use some of them for businesses also, which is why I was going with that.
It's hard to get a straight answer out of FEMA.
FEMA has no control over those, and I don't know what they talk about. Yeah, you can't get an answer.
That's been my experience so far. Keep going.
A couple more things. Fire Chief Walker, he is now our permanent fire chief. I just want everybody to know that. He was interim prior to the storm, and he's now our permanent fire chief. We're glad to have him. He's done a great job. He's done a really good job. Thank you. The water tank. We discussed this morning, you guys were talking about the water tank before the storm. The water tank is now down. Is there any interest in rebuilding a water tank, or would you rather us look at removing that from the equation at the water plant, and possibly, Dana had an idea this morning, looking at resilience, being more resilient in the future, mitigating losses, perhaps doing a second ground tank later, because the ground tank.
$200,000 estimated expense to renovate our tank over 4 years. Give or take.
It was 500,000. over
500,000,
6 years,
okay.
7 years, sorry.
I think the answer was given.
I think that, for me,
The debate's over.
Yeah.
move on. Move on.
Your answer.
Make a decision for us.
It is not a necessity to have.
Move on.
In the back of your packet, you have just kind of it's just a simple flow chart, just to kind of give you an idea of the approach we're gonna take with rebuilding. If you'll go to the page that says phase 1, we just wanna kind of, just at a high level, start the discussions, give you guys something to react to, just to kind of tell you how we're gonna start approaching rebuilding. So for phase 1, what we're looking at is we're gonna establish a task force to do research for us. That will be our agency partners, the professional services, our county partners, working with the county and state agencies to kind of research our options, what we can and cannot do, and we're talking about rebuilding our public infrastructure, our buildings, our parks, our fire station, our sidewalks, our walkovers, everything. So we'll establish a task force. They'll basically be an augmentation of our city staff, bringing in the additional professional help. Much of that is volunteer or provided by the county and state agencies. And then once they come in and do, they'll start looking at researching the options, and then we're gonna have a town hall meeting to get ideas from the public, what you would like to see. Or, you know, for example, you'd like to see a wider sidewalk to be more of a multi-use path, those types of things. So we'll have a town hall meeting, it'll be facilitated, get your ideas, just right up front what you're interested in, what you would like to see. Then we'll take all of those recommendations, and we'll take all those ideas and start developing recommendations. And part of the recommendation is we may have some breakout committees for, and I think those committees would be public meetings, that would be my guess. But we'll be working closely with Nick to make sure we cover the Sunshine Law. But we'll have citizen input, some of our business leaders, community leaders to come in and help us look at all the different ideas and come up with a recommendation. Then we'll have those recommendations, and we'll have another town hall meeting to kind of give you our ideas and what we think would work or not work, and get public input on those ideas. And then once we have your ideas and we're all in agreement of this is what we'd like to do, then it'll go before the council for approval. And that's just high-level planning. For example, the sidewalk, we want to put the sidewalks on 15th Street, 7th Street, Highway 98, we want wider sidewalks, those kind of things. Beach parking, all different ideas for our rebuilding. And then if you go over to phase 2, what we'll start in phase 2 is first we'll develop the scope. Let's use the sidewalks as an example. We'll decide where they're gonna be, how wide they're gonna be, are we gonna put street lights with them, the crossing, pedestrian crossing, whatever. And again, we'll have the same group of folks helping us with the scope, with our county and state agencies. Then we'll go into the planning and design phase where we'll actually plan and lay out that, move into getting an estimate on cost. Now keep in mind, on this phase 2, there's touch points for the council all through here. You know, you've got to approve very different points, but I was trying to keep the slide simple. But the council will have approval, review and approval throughout the process. And then we'll move into funding. We'll be looking at grants, state appropriations, FEMA reimbursements, insurance reimbursements, what we have monetarily to do it. And then once we secure our funding, we know what we're gonna do, we know how we're gonna pay for it, then we'll plan and execute and start rebuilding. So just at a high level, we just wanted everyone to know how we're gonna get public engagement and how we're gonna approach that.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, yes, ma'am.
Just trying to clear up a rumor for everybody out there. There's been some talk that we're gonna lose our Mexico Beach Police Department, and it's all rumors out there, so I'm just asking the question to clear that up.
I don't know anything about that rumor,
Well, we're hearing it out on the street, out in the
okay,
community.
well, then it's a rumor, as far as I'm concerned right now, I don't know.
There's no talk about it or anything like that.
This council hasn't discussed, the meetings I've been to had no discussion of that, but
Okay, good.
we're gonna,
We like our local police department.
okay. All right, are there, go ahead.
I just have one other thing, planning and zoning board. We have the coastal element of the comp plan that you guys had already reviewed. We transmitted it to the state in May. They sent it back with a few changes. It's now ready. It's been redrafted. It's ready for hearing
Final.
and the final hearing and getting that adopted. And then the second piece is the entire comp plan. Nick and Linda Shelley, who has volunteered her time to help us with the recovery period, they're looking at that, the comp plan, seeing what changes or edits they want to make to it, and then we'll be bringing that before planning and zoning for one final review and then to the council. So my question is, you guys want to start P and Z up? We don't have all of our planning and zoning board members in town, but we probably have enough to start meeting again and working through some of those issues.
We should activate
We
it.
should,
Yeah,
yeah.
Right,
absolutely.
we'll start with, since our meeting is the first today, so we'll start with December. Okay, that's it.
All right, other miscellaneous. Anybody at the table? I've got two. Number one complaint. How do people call City Hall?
We are.
I'm tired of, my phone is so hot I can't touch it. Is there no way to call City Hall?
We are on our second set of, we, fair point, no response. We're not gonna have phone service, our former phone service up anytime soon. So we had a temporary solution that Verizon provided us, which has been okay, but not great. Now we have our second temporary solution. You can see from the speakerphone here. We have phones on each of our desks now, but it's,
There's no rhyme or reason to the phone numbers. Each desk has a different number. I mean, I can get you a list of what office is what
Well,
number.
can that get posted somewhere?
yeah, we'll put it on, and it's,
Because I'm changing my phone number.
they're supposed to be routing our, the old City Hall number to these new numbers.
But that's not happening.
It hasn't happened yet, but they were supposed to be doing that this week.
That's-
I hope
that's-
that will work.
That's a high level frustration in our city. And I know we're doing the best we can, but I just had to find out what
We can publish those numbers and get them out on Facebook.
Yeah,
Building
and-
department is critical.
This phase 2 of phones just happened yesterday.
Yeah.
so-
Okay.
And-
Building department and April, I think that would be good.
Right.
Any numbers but mine.
The building department, I think Royce
She
has
has
this,
dedicated
she has a
phone.
dedicated phone as well now, so we're working on it.
The other thing is, I had good news right before the meeting, MBARA are changing their bylaws to accept the 501c3 donations for the city. Very recognizable name, MBARA is not only do they do a good job, but they're very reputable and people can associate. They're going to set up on their website. They are having a board meeting this afternoon to officially do whatever they have to do within their organization, but that can become the city funding conduit for financial donations to a reputable 501c3 organization.
So that money will directly be going to the city.
Yeah, it'll be on there. I mean, you say on there when you peers, but they're gonna put a list of things. They're gonna ask us, they asked me, the first three things I thought of, remember, it happened at 12:30. I said pier, fish cleaning table, canal pavilion. That we could have 15 things on there. But my point is, they want something from the city that will say, when you go to their website, just so people know that they can write on their check or on their, ever how they do it, that it's a city-sponsored need. Is that good? Are there any issues?
The only thing I would say is let's make sure we get a big list out there, because if we have insurance or we get other funding, then if it's earmarked for the pier and we don't need it there, we.
I said I named those three things in 30 seconds, just because they said, give me some examples of what you're talking about. So we need someone, I don't see April, I've been hunting her, to give her the number to call. Who is the?
Is that Bob?
I need to give Bob Cox's phone number.
Yeah, I got it, I'll call
You got
him.
it. Okay, then we can put out 20 things on the list, doesn't matter. Okay, so any other miscellaneous?
Motion for adjournment. Wait a minute,
One
wait a
quick
minute.
question. You said we could have our air conditioners replaced because the guy came yesterday, he came and got a permit from here to come service my house, and I need a new air conditioner. He said he could not put my new air conditioner in, but y'all wouldn't give him, you could not.
We probably hadn't done your SDE, so we just need to do your substantial damage estimate, just to make
My
sure.
house is fine now.
Yeah, so we just need
We
to
just
quickly
need to
do
do
that,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
Last call.
Can I ask one more
Yes,
question
sir.
that I've already
Yes,
asked?
sir.
Because I think I'm in common with a lot of people, and it goes back to I've got a damaged home on 39, but it's not beyond repair. What would you recommend me doing right now? Nothing, because you're talking about.
You on the south side of the road?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd recommend doing that.
Okay, and then wait on what? Before I start, wait till the new FEMA maps come out before and find out?
Absolutely.
So sit on it.
Before you invest in that repair,
Right.
you need to see what the guidelines will be. And we're working on that, so you will
They're
know.
cooking right, and we
That's
all
in the cook.
We all put it on Facebook. I think a lot of people.
We'll
on
put it
Facebook.
everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Sit
a
on-
big
sit on
deal.
it Until we find out what the new map say.
That's what I would do. One, because we can't issue you permit. Last call. All right, motion for adjournment. Thank you everyone for coming.